Still alive, you old fucker.
Oh, he loves you.
He's dependent on me. It's not the same.
I think it's the same.
If fiance is hope for the world, why bother going on?
You haven't seen the world, so you don't know. Come on, baby. Come on.
You heard it up top. Boston has never been scarier because we're heading to a parallel future and talking a post-apocalyptic horror story. That's right. It's the video game adaptation of The Last of Us here on Normies Like Us with your hosts, like Colin and Clicker, like Colin Licker.
Colin Licker. Yeah.
I'll be Microfly. You can't take the sky from me.
And this is Joel Acob.
All right. I thought you'd be
What's up,
Jelly.
Normies? Jelly.
Well,
Yeah.
Maybe
Joel
everyone else
Acob,
is
you got
Jelly,
your
but-
rifle.
Hey, there
That's
you
right.
go. But yeah, just a couple of fun guys. We're going to go ahead and spore over the Last of Us franchise, but mainly looking at this television adaptation. We've talked about the video games here or there, but we will be comparing the two inevitably, but it's definitely more focused on the first two of the TV show with a couple comparisons. Might be spoilers for the game. Keep that in mind, fellas. Just let that sink in. Maybe let that click
Yes.
for a minute before we continue.
And spoilers for
yes.
the game could also be spoilers for the show. It seems like they
And-
have a similar plot.
Pretty
Similar plot
intertwined.
so far, and maybe this is the prequel to the Mario movie because we are looking into potential Mushroom
Hey.
Kingdom.
Video game
origins.
adaptations.
Yeah, they're back.
They're good now. They're good.
Yeah, go figure.
Yeah, we're excited about that one. We're excited to talk to this one. Do we want to remind listeners, like, what were our favorite video game adaptations before? Obviously, Mike's life changed on this podcast
Mhm.
The
when we
Sonic
talked.
movie.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Well, Sonic 2 was a life-changing
Sonic 2.
experience for sure.
Yes.
Double Dragon for a long time, but I think that's in the Mario Brothers camp of not really accurate, but campy enough to be enjoyed. But Sonic 2 so far is my favorite.
Well, I was going to
Yeah.
say maybe Cyberpunk.
Oh,
That's
maybe
different,
that's what I
though.
was
That's
hinting
like a prequel set in the same universe.
it's set in the same
Yeah.
universe, but it's not an
Yeah, you
adaptation.
could
But that's pretty
argue,
good
you
though.
could
That's pretty
argue.
good though. If you can consider it as such, it is the best. But it's not adapting the story of the game exactly.
No.
So
Yeah.
neither Sonic. Well, the Emeralds.
I love that you guys said Sonic and didn't think Cyberpunk. I think Mike, if you listen to the past 30 episodes, has
That's
been
all
talking
I'm
Sonic
talking
2.
about.
You always listen to that song from Sonic 2 soundtrack.
Yeah. Green Hill Zone.
Well,
That's my favorite.
Start me up. Start me up.
Oh yeah. With one
Yeah.
with Sueco and anyway. Colin, what's your favorite video game adaptation? have
I
three,
will
apparently.
point to my Castlevania poster here, of course, and say Castlevania on Netflix. But, I know that we just talked about the upcoming Mushroom Kingdom. Joe's not on the podcast. I will shout out and say the Bob Hoskins, John Leguizamo, Mario that we grew up with. Guys, I worry that it doesn't have the cult following it deserves because the rights are weird and it just is never streaming anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, that could be a problem. I don't
You
know
got
anybody
Dennis
but
Hopper,
Joe that thinks of that movie
King
fondly
Koopa.
though.
Yeah.
We know he loves it.
He loves it, and I appreciate his stance on it. I'm sure there's others out there, but maybe the fact that it's hard to access is part of why it has less of a cult following, because there is such a bizarreness with that movie. So it's definitely worth noting if you've never seen it to try to track it down, I'd say.
It's definitely something
love
that'll
it.
never get made today. Like, it's definitely an
Oh.
artifact of its time.
Absolutely. Jacob, do you
Mid-nineties.
have a favorite video game adaptation?
Well, obviously, there's all these articles and stuff about the curse of video game adaptations, right? But I think we can say the curse is over because there's been so many,
Ooh.
just in the last couple of years, there's been a lot of good adaptations of games. I think
That's
the curse is
Halo.
broken. Halo.
Oh God, I was going to say Uncharted, right? Everyone loves Uncharted.
Well, there's still bad ones, but it
GoldenEye
just
the
seems
movie,
more and
that
more
counts.
now.
yeah.
Like, I think with Last of Us, Sonic, hopefully the Mario movie's good. Castlevania, like you said, you're shouting out all the good ones now, and I think we can put that curse to bed with all these
Well,
recent adaptations.
yes, and the fact that there's more than one acceptable one is heartening. I mean, there's
Yeah.
still bad
Yeah.
ones, but we've come a long way from like the Dead or Alive, like direct to
Doom
DVD
with
and
The Rock.
Doom and
Yes.
King of Fighters,
Yes.
like all these
Yeah.
terrible. Even Jean-Claude Van Damme
Yes.
Street Fighter, even though it's a little bit
Yes.
better.
Even Mortal
still
Kombat,
bad.
which we like those
Yes.
movies, right?
I think Mortal
Yes.
Kombat is good
Yes.
too. Mortal Kombat's
Yeah.
good to me. Yeah.
We
Yeah.
love them. We love them, Eric.
But there was a string of really bad ones, especially in the early to mid 2000s. Silent Hill, not great, you know. So
Right.
the Resident Evil movies made money, but they're not
sequels.
accurate to the game.
Yeah.
So there's been problems, but I think we'll talk about it on this pod. But you know, critics and fans alike seem to be enjoying this, whether they've played the games or not. But speaking of the games, Colin, Jacob, throw it to Colin first. Have you played either of these games? This one seems heavily
yes.
based on the first one. Go ahead.
Let's do a quick history with them. I will say, guys, this franchise I am hands off on. I own a PlayStation. I have never played The Last of Us. There's a very famous, I get spoilers again, we said for everything. There's a very famous last scene in The Last of Us. I have watched people play that scene because I've heard so many people talk about it, and I've been like, oh. And then I have watched Jacob on Twitch play Last of Us Part 2 and some other podcasters too. So that one I'm a lot more familiar with, but the first one, not at all.
And we should
And
probably
Normies-
avoid, I'm just going to say, if we can, that ending for people who are watching the show,
Yeah.
because I assume
It's
that's going
probably
to be
gonna be-
similar.
And
Yeah.
So I
don't
wanna
need to
keep
get
it
into
the
part
pace
2 at all.
of, exactly. We'll keep it the pace of where the show is and compare the plot
Totally.
points from that perspective. But go ahead.
Well, I was
Jacob.
just going to say, Normies, like if you are curious about the games, you can literally just search on YouTube cutscenes from Last of Us. You can watch it like a movie and just watch all the cutscenes. If you want to spoil yourself for this new series, which seems to be following the plot very closely. But for me, I've played both games and finished both games, and I enjoy them a lot. There's a lot of talk about, is it the greatest video game story ever told? And I don't think so. It's good. It's not, it doesn't rise to the level of, Red Dead Redemption 2 or something like that for me, but they are very good cinematically told stories for the game. And I like the gameplay too. Like the stealth is good. It's a lot like Resident Evil, where it's like you have limited ammo, so you have to like really conserve your ammo when you're killing things, at least
I'm not
until
gonna
later.
fucking throw a
You're
brick at this
crafting-
asshole's head.
Yeah, you're crafting shivs and you're throwing bricks and stuff
little
like that.
pipe bombs and stuff. Like you had to be resourceful. Like the survival element is really big of the gameplay, and I think they're pulling that off. We'll get into it proper. But then
Absolutely.
I played and beat the first one, and then I just watched you play the second one. But I got the story through that. But I remember playing the first one on PS3, and it was a big deal when it came out. Now people are like, "Oh, is Last of Us overhyped?" I don't think it is.
Yeah.
Especially the first one, and it was really emotional. Like it was a great story. I was moved by it, especially that ending. Won't spoil it, but there was a lot going into it, even throughout the beats and some of the beats we've already seen. I think they're doing a great job with. So I think at least Last of Us 1 I'm a big fan of. I was going to replay it, but you can't get it on PC until March or something. But there will be the remastered edition on PC.
Yeah, they
I was going to
just
play it this
released
pace
the
of the
remaster.
show. Yeah.
That makes sense. Just play like a couple hours for each episode, basically.
You can do it very easily,
That's an easy way to experience. The other way I want to shout out
Play
that I
along.
think people experienced this game, just as we're kind of talking about the game for a sec, is to say this video game in particular is the number one video game I've heard from people's girlfriends be like, "Oh, I loved watching my boyfriend play that video game."
It's good for a backseat gamer or a couch watcher because it is so cinematic. And obviously Naughty Dog, the studio that made it, they're known for basically two things: Uncharted and this, and Crash Bandicoot back in the day. If you're
old,
we make cutscenes.
If you're one of the ancients,
but Uncharted, obviously very cinematic as well. Got a movie adaptation, obviously, and so that's kind of what they're good at, is making these very cinematic type games.
And since they're so good at the cinematic type games, it's probably, makes perfect sense to make a cinematic adaptation and then put it on television. So let's jump right into it. Let's take it to the HBO Max as we talk Joel, Ellie, Clickers, and more. Last of Us TV show right after this.
We're back. Things are getting a little spooky here. That's right, because we're talking Last of Us. Oh, sorry, guys. I thought I heard something in the distance there. Listeners, you're joining us in the middle of our little quarantine camp here. Like we said, right outside of the Boston quarantine zone, where we are holed up, scared for our lives by this mycological infestation.
Nice.
I'm not just talking
Mike,
about our
yeah.
host Mike here.
No, but I am here to
That's right,
stay. You can't get rid
mycology.
of me. That's right.
I want to ask you guys, what do you think of these? They're not zombies, right? They're
Mhm.
infected by fungi, like we mentioned, which are basically mushrooms. Uh, do you like these better than the traditional zombies, like the Walking Dead zombies or the fast zombies?
They're more interesting to me, even in the game. Again, there's some differences between how they're presented and how they function, right? We'll get into that. But
Yes.
a
I like some of the changes
spore-based, me
they made
too,
for the
yeah.
show. Yeah.
But a spore-based parasite, and everyone's seen they underline it in the show very early on. Those ants that get those spores in them that come out of their head, and it's all
Yes.
crazy. Like that's
Right.
terrifying. So to be like that plus people, it's a fresh
It-
take on the
yeah.
zombie. Yeah.
And that's one of those
Absolutely.
early internet things, Mike, where people would share that article in particular to be like, this little weird ant that has like a little weird orange thing that grew out of its head. Did you know that like its mind is being controlled and it's like going against the hive to spread its little spores? And like, I just remember like kind of like society, because it was kind of at the Walking Dead time too, where people were like, ooh, this is interesting. And this fucking show very smartly taps into that fascination for some reason. I think it's a cool gimmick.
Especially after a global pandemic, it's like, oh
Yeah.
no.
Totally.
We're
And some
sensitive
of the
now.
changes they make for the show with the tendrils over like the air, like the game was basically they're spread through airborne spores that you would breathe in,
Mhm.
which you think would make sense with COVID and everything. Like it's a good parallel. But I like what they did with the show because in the game there's sections where you have to wear a gas mask, right? Because they're so spore heavy,
Mhm.
which is good game mechanic. But for the show, you don't want them wearing gas masks all the time. You want to see Pedro Pascal's face, right? You never see his
Covers his
face in other
face for
things.
extended periods.
Well,
Yeah.
it's unfortunate that the gas mask was silver, and then he would have to hold like a green little eared, oxygen tube
Yeah,
and run around.
named
now.
Ellie.
Yeah, Ellie was going to be a Death Stranding little green baby tube that he carries.
Yeah. But I
That's
like
right.
what they did with the show with the tendrils, and they're sort of how they're all connected, where they say like, oh, if you step on a patch, miles away, it wakes them up and they start coming at you. Like I like how they're all connected.
Yeah,
Very
Colin, how
cool
do you feel
change.
about that idea? Because that's
That
different.
yeah, again, it's playing into that's the quote unquote mushroomness of it all. I didn't know the spore stuff. I wasn't aware of that in the video game. I think it's enough, this weird opening scene that we get of the old
Maybe.
professor of mushrooms,
Oh
right?
yes,
Mhm.
yes.
Just kind of going in and saying like, hey, magic mushrooms, LSD, we do that stuff. It's pretty weird. Mushrooms are pretty weird, right? It's like, yeah, mushrooms are pretty weird.
Right.
Yeah.
And what
That
if this
scene in
did jump to
the
people?
opening of the second episode, sort of paralleling again the COVID pandemic, where it's like,
Yes.
oh, shit's about to get bad, and she says, bomb this city right now to stop the spread, and then you find out they did bomb the cities
Mhm.
later on. But maybe we should get into who's behind this adaptation. How did it get its
Yep.
start? I can talk a little briefly about that, but basically the showrunners, you have Craig Mazin, screenwriter, most notable for Chernobyl a couple years ago, a big hit on
Mhm.
HBO. But before that, he was kind of known as a screenwriter. I know him because he has a screenwriting podcast that he's had for like a while now, and I listen to it occasionally with another screenwriter named John August. But Craig Mazin, before Chernobyl, which kind of came out of nowhere for him, his career was like bad comedies, basically.
It was
Scary
like
Movie
Deuce
3,
Bigelow,
Scary
right?
Movie
Oh,
4,
right. That's
the
Oh.
Hangover movies, superhero
that's-
movie, and then all of a sudden he makes this prestige TV drama, Chernobyl, and that's kind of changed his whole career. So he gets The Last of Us. His co-showrunner on this show is Neil Druckmann. Now, Neil Druckmann, if you played The Last of Us, you might know who he is. He is the creative director of Naughty Dog. So he's
Huh.
basically the showrunner of the games. The creative
Imagine
guy
that.
behind the games. Yeah.
That's
so
really
Wow,
one of
getting
a
somebody
kind.
who knows what their property is about and getting them involved in the creative process and planning of the storyline. Wow.
right.
Unheard
you have
of in
one
Hollywood.
guy who's the
Mhm.
Last of Us expert. You have one guy who's sort of the screenwriting coming at it from a cinema point of view, who can kind of make it into a show. It's like a dream team matchup. Like, Halo, these other shows, like just get the people that made the game and who, want to adapt the game instead of make a bunch of changes. And there you go.
Well,
'Cause
now the
I
people
would
that
imagine-
made Halo don't even work at Microsoft anymore, but that's neither here
Right,
nor there.
that's true.
Massive layoffs.
Well, because I would imagine, Jacob, that the scene that you were just talking about that opens the second episode, the sort of CDC, we get that in The Walking Dead, where you see sort of
Yeah.
like the person dealing with the outbreak. I'm sure that's not in the video game because it's
No.
detached from the main story they're trying to tell. And you can tell that, like, Craig Mazin, a guy who you just said made Chernobyl, who like has that series has 50 scenes of people like doing
Yeah.
like studies and going like destroy
getting a lot of
everything.
Chernobyl
It's like,
vibes
Yeah.
for the show.
everything's bleak,
Yeah.
everything's terrible. Like they're tapping into their strengths. So it is a great marriage, these two.
Yeah, and like I said, they are sticking pretty closely to the plot of the game so far through the first 2 episodes, but they are adding these little scenes and expanding on certain things. In the first episode, you had that talk show from the 60s, which was, whatever, but then you have a little, like, just like the games, it does start with Joel's daughter, his biological daughter, from the point of view of her
Sarah.
before the outbreak, during the outbreak, I guess, the start of the outbreak. And but I just like some of these little additions they're making, kind of expanding the world, and that's all you can ask for, really.
But so we get out of that stuff. We get out of the additions. We go straight into this opening scene. Now, important to note, you just said the creative forces behind the video game, Neil Druckmann. The video games have actors, amazingly enough. Joel, the main character here, it was portrayed by Troy Baker, who's like
Probably the most
the
famous voice
guy.
actor.
He's
Yeah.
like,
Mhm.
but he's like Nathan Drake. He's the Joker. He's Batman sometimes. Like he does every video game motion capture performance you can imagine. Now we get Pedro Pascal here stepping in, but I want to ask you two, who have played this video game. It's like, press start. It's happening. Like the credits are over. We're jumping into the scene. Do you guys feel like I know you guys were saying it's been a while, but do you immediately feel like, fuck, I'm playing The Last of Us?
For the show, like watching the show, it
Yeah,
feels like that.
yeah, just like that with
Yeah.
these fucking right when the show's starting.
Totally. Because like I say, in the game, you're playing as his daughter. It's a little expanded on the show where you see some scenes of her going to school or whatever, going to her neighbor's house, the old lady, and that's very creepy when you see the old lady in the background changing, and that's some nice foreshadowing. So I like that. In the game, you basically just start with her at night, and it's basically right when the pandemic or the outbreak is starting. So she's seeing the news and and then Joel comes home and it kind of escalates from there. But the way they're filming it, yeah.
I'm saying the opening cutscene is very similar to like, well, how do you get the money to buy this watch? I sell hard drugs, and like so like that stuff is all in there.
They're taking
too.
a lot of lines straight from the game.
The same T-shirt is
Yeah.
recreated from the
Oh
game.
wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. But again, even the way they're like when they get in the truck, and they're driving through just the hellscape that's happening outside, that is also straight out of the game, where you just see, just the cameras in the car, and you just see kind of the driving around, explosions, people got
Like a
dying.
Children of
and
Men kind of vibe for that whole
Yes.
sequence.
God
Yeah, they
damn.
recreated that.
Yeah.
And it's one of the most, I mean, we've seen the first episode, obviously, there's a whole moment where they get stopped by the soldiers, oh, we got 2 people here, oh, we're not infected, this and that. And it's like, obviously one of the biggest tragedies in Joel's life and in the show. Maybe viewers weren't expecting that, but players of the game knew exactly what was going to happen to Sarah. And it was, when I
Single
played the
tear.
game, one of the most emotional things I'd seen in a game or experienced.
It really is.
The
It's
intro
one of the
does a good
best,
job of endearing them to you. Yeah.
And it's
Wow.
essentially the tutorial where it's like dropping into this world. It's like, all right, you're playing in this girl. If you didn't know like the promotional material from the game before you played it, you may even think, oh, that's the girl from the game, right? You're gonna be playing as her throughout the game. Nope. She dies, obviously. Spoiler alert for the first episode. And then it cuts 20 years later, and you see Joel after the outbreak, and it's just
Now he's a man.
yeah.
Our boy has gone from dark hair to gray. Now, guys, we just said he's stepping in for the actor here, Pedro Pascal. Of course, talked about him. Once or twice on this podcast. Let me think. 50 different fucking times over the course of Mandalorian and Game of Thrones. But
Yeah.
Mike, how is he doing stepping in as our Joel character here?
I think he's absolutely crushing it. And honestly, I rewatched some of those early cutscenes, like the opening of the game and the stuff up through where episode 2 ends. And I'm like listening to it while I'm doing housework or whatever. And I swear, when I hear, Joel's voice acting, I swear it's Pedro Pascal reading the lines. Like, he's doing a very good job as Joel. And his
is doing a good
emotion, he's bringing the essence of the character to life, but he's nailing the voice too, which you got to give him props for that.
Wow.
Absolutely. And I was talking to my sister. She's a huge fan of the games, and I
wow.
was like, "Are you excited to watch the show?" And she's like, "I am." I like Pedro Pascal. I'm a little apprehensive because he's not what I pictured as Joel, like in my mind for like a live action actor. And I was like, well, what could they really do? It's not like they could cast Troy Baker. He looks nothing like Joel in real life. She's like, yeah, I'll give it a try. And then she watched it, the first 2 episodes, and she texted me. She's like, oh man, I love it. I'm
Hell
in.
yeah.
There's a universe where we have John Krasinski with a beard, and it's
God.
we did not want that.
Yeah, and the
How's he
Nathan
doing for you,
Fillion
Colin?
Drake
We
stuff.
must be quiet, silent. Yeah.
Here's the thing. I like it. I know that he is so anti this. I think he should have not had a beard in the first part to really hit home the transformation. But I know personally, Pedro Pascal's like, I don't shave this anymore.
Oh, right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, if you think about it, 20 years. So he's supposed to be like, what, in his early 30s, in the
You think he's like 35, 36 in the pre-outbreak?
Yeah.
Yeah, which
It
they
is
do
like
what they can, but he's
starting to think about any young person he's going to interact with was like a 10-year-old when this thing happened. Any super young person he's interacting with was born after this shit. Like that's
Ellie.
just racks your brain watching it.
Born into it, yeah.
Yeah,
and
it's wild.
I have to say there's 2 saddest video game deaths ever. One is Aerith from Final Fantasy VII. It's an old game. Deal with it. And then there's Sarah from The Last of Us. That's like the 2 most impactful, I think, character deaths for me in video game history, and they nailed both of them, which sets up, like Karate Kid, like Joel. He's a father figure with no child, like Mr. Miyagi, right? But now he's resistant to have attachments because it's 20 years later. They've really set up the pain for our boy.
No, and 20 years later to be this big fuck up, and you're like, oh, what? So how old are you? Exactly the age my daughter was when she died. Okay, redemption. Here I come.
Right.
Yeah. Wonder what's gonna happen here. But we slowly get to know each other.
Yeah, and I do want to shout out. HBO. Obviously, they went out a little bit on a limb here by sort of race swapping Joel and his family with. Obviously he's white in the game. Now he's Hispanic. That includes his brother Tommy, who's played by Gabriel Luna, who was the Terminator in Terminator Dark Fate.
Rules.
Yep.
And his
Go to our
daughter.
Terminator episode.
Shout out the Ghost Rider.
Yeah. But I like what they're doing, and it's like they're not like in your face about it, like, but it's just like it's just a thing that they're Hispanic, and that's great.
Yeah, they're from Texas. It's
So
true to the real world.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Cast his daughter appropriately. It's all good to me, and I think Sarah again. She's like got blonde hair and shit in the original game. I don't give a shit about that. I think the actress does a great job. You're endeared to them, and you're sad when she's gone.
And here's the other thing. I wasn't joking when I said this off pod to us, but I've said on pod before, our whole generation doesn't get to be nostalgic for when we grew up because so much bad stuff happened that instead we go to quote unquote the made up 80s, just the 80s.
We jumped to the made up 80s.
This whole opening scene of 2003,
early 2000s,
where it's like, hey man, you're not catching everything that's on TV. You don't have any other sources to like get in contact with people. You're taking stuff slow. You're listening to the news or the radio. You're going around and like scrounging for money to do shit. You're fucking, hey, how much is this? $20? Yeah, sure. Okay. Cut to a fucking picture of fucking Bush. Fucking cut
American
to a bumper
flags.
sticker that says, dude, everything is so pro because we just came out of it.
We're so patriotic
just after
now.
9/11.
Cut to him being a Gulf War veteran or a Desert Storm op or whatever the hell it says. I was like, this was my time. This is the time I remember the most more than anything. And let me tell you, we would fuck this shit up enough to be like, we're all in lockdown. It's over. Like that's what happened. I remember it.
Yeah. Well, if this happened if the outbreak happened during Bush's presidency, then I think it probably would have been
called
that
the
bad.
Super Patriot Act. It just means I can hang you if you leave
Curfew.
the quarantine zone.
Mission accomplished.
Did you say you can hang us? Why does that banner say mission accomplished, Mike? This isn't good.
No.
Yeah.
But, I need to sign the terms on my iPod that they gave me in the camp. It's part of it. It's part of the ULA. But I do want to highlight something that's set up is a little bit different here. Well, it's not even like different, but obviously it's not spore based. But we're learning about this, and I didn't come up with this. Somebody mentioned this on YouTube. Can't remember who. Sorry, but they're like, look at how the opening. They're like, where are the pancakes? Do you want to bake some cookies and shit? He's like, oh, I'm on Atkins. I don't eat flour. And then it's a flour factory in Jakarta. So there's something with flour in the spores potentially that they're setting up with, oh, you didn't make the pancakes like you said you would. Oh, crap, you know?
I wanted
did
to
like that.
ask,
Yeah.
well, was the global warming stuff in the original? Because when he was like, well, sure, it wouldn't grow, at this temperature. But what if the planet was a little bit warmer? I was like, oh, this is fucking
I'm not
good.
sure if that
I
was
like
added
this.
in, but yeah, that kind of
Okay.
detail, like expanding on, flour is infected with yeast
I'm
or
in,
whatever
man.
kind of stuff. Let's go. Yeah.
Yeah, and
A
I was going to
fungus
say I
in
like
the yeast. Yeah.
the Atkins reference because
Yes.
At the
Atkins
time,
was a huge
yeah.
thing in the
It's-
2000s. Yeah,
I
Buddy,
forgot.
let me tell you again, 2003, I was like, this is so fucking real.
yeah.
Ellie's never heard of Atkins.
No,
She can't even swim.
her life's over.
We got
Right.
Pools
no.
in the QZ.
A guy later
Dang.
is wearing like a Bush shirt in the camp in the 20 years jump because you have to remember they never got anything else after that. So like
Yeah, there's no
the
Obama.
shoelaces and
no
shit
Trump.
that they're like trading for. But it's just like, can you imagine technology stopping in 2003, guys?
Yeah,
Oh, no, it's wild. So
yeah.
I think
Lots
they're doing a
changed in
good job
20
of
years.
nailing, wardrobe. And again, we talked about the creatives behind it, but like production design, costume design, every
Yes.
department, just like Chernobyl, they're crushing it. I don't know if it's the same set
I wanted
designers
to-
for Chernobyl.
Yeah, I was going to shout that out because if you listen to our Andor episode with friend of the pod, Adam, like he shouted out the production design on that. That production designer was the same person from Chernobyl, and I think they brought
Wow.
the same team from Chernobyl for this, and you can really tell, especially in the second episode, which we'll get
Yes.
to, right? But the
Yeah,
post-apocalyptic Boston, I mean, incredible production design, set design, all that stuff.
and makeup design. I think one of the leads, was also very much involved in bringing Vecna to life. So when we're doing tendrils and spores and this kind of stuff, it's like they
I'm the
assemble
tendril guy.
A-team. I'm the tendril guy. Resident Evil reboot, come get me, dude.
Right.
All right, let's keep moving with it then and say
Yes.
so that we're in this post-apocalyptic world. Things have changed. We're in a Boston quarantine zone. It is set up by Fedra. Is that sort of the name of the government overseeing
right.
organization?
Fedra, and then you have the Fireflies, which are the terrorists or revolutionaries, however you might view them, but they're kind of a rebel group that's trying to overthrow Fedra because Fedra is so kind of oppressive to the citizens. Right?
And
So
Yeah.
not only do you have to like work these fascist jobs of whatever you can get, whatever the government tells
Burning
you to
dead
do,
bodies. Yeah.
in the middle of the streets, these quote unquote terrorists again could be screaming free Boston and shooting up people, and you could be stuck in the crosshairs. We're seeing that basically this is the bleakest future possible.
Yeah.
yes.
I mean, compared to like Walking Dead, I mean, there's more of a government here, but it's very oppressive. But yeah, it's like the same thing as Walking Dead, where it's like, oh, you just have to survive. You have to do whatever it takes to survive. You have to kill people or be killed, basically. And everyone's gonna have to go through that moment where they're like, I'm not a good person anymore. Like, I'm a bad person, but I'm just trying to survive.
We'll get a literal speech of that. Now, Joel has become sort of a scavenger, trader, whatever you would say.
Drug
Smuggler.
dealer. Yeah.
And he has been put into contact with his partner to protect a little girl. Now let's introduce our co-lead here. Again, in the video game, portrayed by former child actress Ashley Johnson, we instead have Bella Ramsey from Game of Thrones portraying Ellie, our co-lead.
That's right. Bella Ramsey, you might remember her as Lady Lyanna Mormont, I think her name was.
lady.
She was a little lady.
Little lady who fought she died fighting that troll or giant or whatever that she
Where
fought,
literally
but-
Newsweek would write articles afterwards like, who's that little girl we watched in last week's Game of Thrones? Because it was such a cultural phenomenon because, of course, that was the HBO primetime gem show, which this is trying to be now. So it's interesting that they double
it's
down
just
and go,
HBO
got our two kids.
casting from their previous show, Pedro Pascal, Bella Ramsey. And it's, but I mean, even when the casting, announcement came out, I was like, oh, that's good casting. Like she's gonna do good, I think.
Yeah. I mean, in the game, there's a definitely striking likeness to, Elliot Page. So,
right.
In his earlier days.
For sure.
Should have gotten royalties, I think. But again, this actress has a
didn't he
different
even
look
sue
than
them
video game Ellie too.
For like stealing his identity, right?
I
They could
believe so.
have, yeah. But this new actress, however, different look than the game. But I think it took me about one episode to warm up. But by the time we get to episode 2, like I'm all in with Pedro Pascal and her as Ellie. I think she's doing a great job. She's got the snark, the attitude, and you believe that as a 17-year-old, she'd have to kind of be a badass
That
to
fuck
even
you
get this
attitude.
far. Yeah, because everyone around her, fuck you, you know.
And we get a different sort of introduction. Like in the game, you're introduced to Ellie when Joel meets her after that deal gone bad, where they, that guy that dies or whatever. And in the show, they just show up, they're already dead. In the game, that's the whole tutorial for learning the shooting and game mechanics. You have to go through this compound and like kill a bunch of people, and that's where you meet Ellie in the game. In the show, you get a new introduction where she's kind of tied up by Firefly. They're testing her because, as we find out, she was bit, she was infected, but she ain't turning, So and you get that fuck you attitude where she's like, count to 10, she's like 8, 9, fuck you, like, I like that. I like
right
that.
away
Yeah.
introduced like aren't you a
Kicking
little
the
short to
food
be a
over.
stormtrooper? She doesn't give a shit. Yeah.
Oh, that's a great
She's
way to
very
put it.
cool,
She's very
yeah.
cute. Now, again, it
Or to be a
was
Mandalorian,
set up.
I guess. Aren't you a little short to be a Mandalorian? Should have said.
It was set up in the past to be a Maisie Williams, Arya from Game of Thrones, led feature film made by Sam Raimi. So you're just looking
like a
at
decade ago.
but you're looking at the pool of like, where are strong female characters being written and developed? And it's interesting that it's from the same show, and that I think that both these girls were standouts. Obviously, Sophie Turner. There were other Amelia Clark, amazing Gwendolyn Christie, my beloved female characters on that show.
Yep.
But like, I think this Ellie, I think she's primed to pop, guys. I think this is going to set her up more than just like a little Wednesday fad. I think we're going to go on and have people be like, oh, this is like the definitive video game performance here.
Could be, yeah. And I think 7, 8 years ago, it would have been Maisie Williams. She sort of aged out of the role because I guess it took so long to get this off the ground. But yeah, I think Bella Ramsey, I think she's doing great so far.
Yeah, I agree. I think we have if it's kind of built on this duo, right? You have to live up to, if not exceed, the game's charisma between those portrayals. And I think they're living up to it, and we'll see how far they take it. But
And I think even the actress
they
that
got the
plays
basics
Tess,
right.
Yeah, the actress that plays Tess, Anna Torv, different than the voice actress for Tess, obviously. And I thought she did great in these 2 episodes. Like she was nailing Tess, which is a somewhat minor character in the game, but she brought a lot of emotion to it. And her moment in the 2nd episode that really got to me. That was very emotional.
Right. But just to have done the work at the outset to at least get the foundation laid correctly. Now, I mean, this is a anime thing, but like think of Dragon Ball Evolution. Like you get none of it right at the outset. So at least here we're starting off on the right foot.
We'll just compare to something like Halo, where the showrunners of Halo were like, we didn't look at the games or anything. Like we wanted to tell our own story. It's like, that's not what people want. They want a Halo
Then
adaptation.
who are you marketing it to?
Let alone the movies. Mike and I did a whole Netflix Resident Evil episode where we were like, what is this?
And
this
who are
is
they for?
nothing like the games.
Yeah.
Yes.
Or even something like Witcher, which obviously Henry Cavill left the show because he wanted it to be more accurate to the games. And it's just amazing that it's taken so long for people to realize, oh, get the guy who created the games, tell the story of the game, and that's what people want. They want a faithful
some input. Because again, Jacob, I think a lot about your argument that you made about Sonic, where you're like, you can't directly do Sonic, you adapt him to the real world, and you create a movie around that. I think that is such a genius observation of sometimes you do have to do the sacrifices. But you're not doing the movie where it's like, and the Witcher comes to the real world and he's got to interact. No, it's not that. And this is not that as well. So why not have the input from the guy who's like, well, what's my job? I'm the keeper of the canon for the Last of Us universe.
Right.
Yeah. And to not just switch things up to throw off the video game viewers, right? Like the story's good. It's good enough for people to relive it if they played the games, and for people who've never played the game to get hooked. Just leave it alone, man. And so far they are, more or less.
And this was sort of a complaint that I had after the first episode, where I was like, well, what what is this show doing that it needs to exist because you can't just
Right.
play the
Great
game and get
question.
the same
That's a
story?
good question. Yeah.
And I think after the second episode, I was definitely more in because I realized, like, yeah, they are telling it is a straight up adaptation of the game, but they're expanding on certain things that they couldn't do. Like, they have more time in the show to go into sort of these things. And I think that's its strength is that it's able to expand on that world more than the games did.
And
Yeah.
there's certain limitations too that go the other way that I want to praise them for is you have less time to set things up. For example, we would have multiple combat encounters explaining how the clickers work and the infected and how you need to be quiet. Like they have one scene to do that.
Yeah.
And they nail it, and it's crazy.
And when they get to that,
and it's so tension filled,
genuinely scary. Like, yeah,
Mike, you don't want like a scene where he's like, "We've got 5 bullets left, but if you scavenge for 2 more bullets,
they need to craft a
go get that
Molotov
brick." Yeah, like they could have done it bad, but they really nailed it on establishing your main threat.
There's some subtle references to the games where they're like, moving things around,
crouching behind a low wall.
Yeah,
there's a lot of that in the game, and they do it.
And when they're literally using the environment later, where it's like, and of course, this thing is basically a ladder, this turned over, and I'm like, oh,
right.
Okay.
Even Ellie walking on the boards between buildings. That's an iconic shot from the game where you see the Boston skyline in the background.
Can't deny that view. Yeah,
yeah, you
straight
got
out of the game.
Boston State Building with that gold dome. Yeah,
it's iconic, and seeing it in real life is cool. And like, I haven't played the game in 10 years, but then I'm reminded, like, oh yeah, they got to go to this city capital or whatever. They got to do the stairs are going to collapse. I'm like, okay, yeah, I remember like this vaguely, but it's fresh enough, and the actors are performing it well enough that it feels exciting and new.
When people ask that question, where it's like, why should this be redone or whatever, like what you guys just said of like. It even has like 2 or 3 iconic images. It's like, that's enough for me. It's like
to see that
something,
in live action.
But something that has like a good developed, cool, interesting world, Jacob, where you're like, yeah, why doesn't that deserve to be seen by the biggest audience possible?
Right. And obviously not, I'd say at least 50%, if not more, of the audience of the show never played the games. So they are experiencing the
and never will. I never will.
And huge opening first 2 weeks, right?
Also, didn't it like boost like the sales by like 200% or something of the video game?
It's a real cyberpunk
situation.
Like, yeah, why not?
That was my argument with Sonic. Sonic is a more nebulous concept where they had to adapt Sonic to the real world, like you're saying. This was like, it's perfect for adaptation because it's so cinematically told in the game. Just do a straight adaptation, and it's a win. Yeah.
And it's a type of game that non-gamers can buy, and they can learn how to play it easily because it's more of a narrative driven, AAA, I call them a hallway game. It's very linear, but you can learn it.
If you're not a gamer, if the game plays too hard, you can put it on the easiest setting and kind of just blow through it for the story.
Did you hear that Pedro Pascal just had his nephew play it? He was like, I can't play it, so I just watched him play it.
Right. I think they did tell like they told Bella Ramsey not to play it just so she would bring her own kind of, like, you don't want to be constantly thinking, oh, am I basing this off the first portrayal? Like, you want to do your own thing. So that makes total sense to me. But that just the ruined Boston, incredible, and
looks perfect.
Would you guys be surprised to know that this whole shoot was shot in Edmonton, Canada?
Huh.
Oh, okay.
I'm surprised.
Biggest production ever shot in Canada, apparently.
Now these big ruinous Boston shots, are these stagecraft? Are we doing some volume, I would imagine?
I'm not sure. I have to, they always have the behind the scenes kind of thing after. I need to go watch those to kind of see how they did this, because it looks like ruined Boston. It's like I'm sure they have a huge budget.
They look alone.
Yeah. I'm imagining this is just me. There's this information's already out there and we didn't look it up, but I'm imagining there's elements of, we have one street that we've done and then it's extensions of the green screen beyond that, but it doesn't feel volumey. I was looking for volume. No. I'm feeling more traditional extensions.
Well, I think that's the best way to use the volume. Where it's like, okay, we have this huge set, but then past that for the skyline and stuff, we're going to use volume to kind of enhance it. And I think that's what like the Batman did, right? And they used the volume really well.
So the best shots of Willow, we were saying last week, look that way.
Yeah.
To enhance a real set. Yeah.
Definitely. And they're definitely doing that, whether with the volume or with traditional green screen. And they're doing it great. The the quality holds up, and I'm looking forward to more iconic stuff, not to spoil, coming down. You know, there's a university scene, if you know, you know. Like, there's very cool, more iconic stuff that I'm very much looking forward to seeing them bringing to life because they've done a great job so far.
Yeah, and even with certain scenes, they're kind of condensing, like the hotel scene when they go in the hotel and it's like they're wading through the water and stuff. That in the game is in Pittsburgh, I think, when they get to Pittsburgh. 'Cause
Okay.
obviously, the game, they're going to be traveling west throughout the show. So they're going to go into different cities and different locations. But they kind of condense that and then to have certain references to the game. Like, yeah, it's really rewarding. And I was worried that, like, because I know the story from the game, am I going to be bored or not interested in the show? But that's not been the case so far for me. Like, it is cool to see those references to the game and also get the story from a different perspective.
So, Colin, having not played the game then, how do you feel about the first 2 episodes? Kind of, here's Ellie, here's Joel, we got to get her to the Fireflies, we get to the truck, nobody's here, what the fuck do we do? Like, this whole thing.
And you guys are making me think I will find some beautiful girl playing this first game on Twitch once we get off of here and start obsessing over that. I like when literally the reveal in the second episode between our dynamic duo, when they're worried about the little girl that they're bringing with her. Oh no, you are infected. And they kind of start turning and interrogating her. Mike, where there's the moment of, oh, hold on. You think this is a we're going to save the apocalypse, you're the one cure, end of the world movie?
Yeah,
do you know
we've
how
heard
many
it
of
all.
those there?
Yeah.
like literally for him to be like, that's bullshit.
Yeah.
That's a great setup for me who's like, oh, is this that story? And for him to be like, oh, no. Let me call that story out real quick and just tell you it's not that story.
Yeah, because Joel is sort of jaded and disillusioned by existing for 20 years in this pandemic. And obviously nothing
And it
is
never
gotten
getting
better.
better. And Jacob, people never wearing their mask to Dick's or, never wearing their mask to Ralph's. It's like, what the trauma we have for 3 years, imagine what Joel has, Mike, where he's like, you're a mushroom guy. It's
a
like,
miracle cure? Yeah, I've heard it
this
before.
is bullshit.
Even though she has the proof on her arm that, like, she was bitten and it's not getting worse, he still, doesn't believe it. Because
and then
like,
as a non-player, I'm asking the same questions that he has later where he's like, the one bite, sure, but she's been bit again. She's been this, where I'm like, oh shit, like, what is going on here?
Yeah.
Did they do that in the game? Did she get bit a second time? That part I couldn't remember if that was added.
She didn't get bit a second time, but just when you get to that test moment where she's like, look, this is real. Like, she's just using the first bite in the game where she's like, this is 3 weeks old. I just got bit and it's already worse. Like, this
1,
is
2, 3, 4, 5.
Yep. Yeah. So I think that's cool to underline to the viewer, like, oh, this is legit. Because, like, as game players, we know it's legit. So to have her get bit again, it's a good way to be like, no, see? Like,
it's scary.
This is real. And it helps Joel's
but Joel
character
has
be like,
to start,
maybe.
Right. But Joel's got to start from that place where, like, he totally doesn't believe it first. And then over time, obviously his relationship with Ellie is going to grow. But at first he's like, doesn't want anything to do with this girl, like, doesn't like this job at all, seems very suspicious, like, you gotta smuggle this girl west, like, why? Like,
it's the worst thing that could hurt him is taking care of a young lady again.
Yeah.
He just can't open his heart to that.
And she's suspicious of him too and doesn't want it. She's got her own thing. But
they literally say to her, Mike, in the second episode, my favorite part, we're not the good guys. I want you to understand that. It's like, ooh.
Yeah.
And that's what Walking Dead has been doing for like 8 seasons, where like, we are the Walking Dead, right? So like, that's been done, but so far to compare this to Walking Dead, like, and I know that had a huge budget eventually too, but it was mainly, I think, to pay the different actors and stuff over time. This, like, I don't know, to compare it to Walking Dead, like, production levels are so much better.
You're forgetting what the highs of that were. Because it's been so muddled and so long. Yeah.
And it was so hit or miss from season to season. But like season 2, if you remember, they're just on that farm for like the entire season because they didn't have the budget to like have more locations.
It's a bottle season.
Yeah.
A whole bottle season.
Yeah, your show's good when you do a bottle season.
Yeah. Which they did
this
a
one
lot
we're
with
writing
the characters. Off. But here we can save on the pay for all these big name actors, or who will get bigger names as the show gets more popular. We have a core duo and then occasional side players, and then the rest of it goes into special effects, set design, and this and that. And that's a good balance for me, at least for this story.
Yeah, you can see the budget on the screen, and you can really tell.
it seems just like a guest star episodic. Like you could just see like this to me as a
Good
viewer.
traveling.
It's like they might not be done with this adventure at the end of this first season. They could not even get to the state they're trying to get to. You know, like I
Totally.
have no idea.
And if you
Yeah, we
played the
could
game,
talk
you know
about
it's sort of structured. It's like a road trip movie because they're going out
Yeah.
west. Like you said, different episodic things where they make different stops. If you've seen next week's preview,
Preview.
Ooh, I
you know
did
it's going
not.
to go into Bill, the character Bill from the show, played by Nick Offerman. Another great casting, I think,
Mm-hmm.
because he's basically like Nick Offerman in the game.
Oh,
So
great.
that's going to be a lot of fun. Yeah.
Okay. Hooray.
So it's a fan favorite character. We like Bill, you know, and great casting for that. But we'll see where that goes. But we'll see also, like, how many episodes total are we getting? Do we know that? Like,
Yeah, is it 8 or
like
10 or
8.
something?
8 or 9.
because at the
The
current
classic.
pace, I'm wondering if they'll finish. I don't think they'll finish the first game in one season.
I don't
That's
think-
what I'm saying.
Yeah, I
Right.
think maybe 2 seasons for the whole first game, and then if they want to do the second game,
2 seasons for that.
season. Yeah, but that'll be interesting too, just based on casting and stuff. But we won't.
And
get
it
into a
seems
whole
like
different
she'd
thing.
have to grow up a little, or maybe some time would go. But let me ask you this, guys, as video game players, do you think they'll do any big last huge divergences? I've read a couple articles now. You guys pointed out spores versus the tendrils. There's been some changes. But do you think anything truly plot-wise as we move through this season, they'll take like a big swing
think-
away?
The basic beats are going to be the same, but they're just going to sort of expand on certain things. Maybe condense certain things into other things, or change
Sure.
certain characters into other characters.
Combine 2 to 1 or something, that kind
Yeah,
of thing.
but so
which is
far it's been
natural.
pretty faithful to the game, even with
They're not
the
going to kill Ellie
Fireflies-
episode 4.
No.
Shock everyone.
Gone. I'm what I give the show credit for is, again, it's just a general execution. Like, I'm already like looking forward to stuff I know is coming, even though I know what happens after. Like, I know the result. I'm just looking forward to seeing it play out with these characters, you know, and these actors and this
There's a
production
certain
design.
I'm looking forward to. There's a certain confrontation with Ellie where she meets some characters, and one of those characters in the show is going to be played by Troy Baker as sort of a cameo.
Oh,
Oh,
cool.
that's
And I
fun.
believe Ashley
Yeah.
Johnson is going to have a part as well. So
Yeah,
that's very
yeah.
cool.
Give her a cameo. That's great.
So that's a
Okay.
lot of fun. And then
Did you
if
say somebody else was in the cast is from the game too?
So Marlene, the head of the Fireflies, is the one actor to reprise her role from the game. Same voice actor now playing the role in live action.
Okay.
Okay.
Wow.
And probably because she looks a lot like the game character, right? Probably because they modeled her off the. But yeah,
I would assume maybe she did the performance. I have no idea. That's
Oh, there's
crazy.
a lot of motion capture too. I wonder if she
Yeah.
did her own mocap for the game. You know,
Yeah.
A lot of times,
but for the most
voice
part, a
actors
lot
will.
of the voice actors, they don't look like Troy Baker doesn't look like Joel. Ashley Johnson's
Right.
like 39 years
David
old.
Hayter doesn't look like Solid Snake. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, what's his name? Stargate over here, son of Zeus now.
Oh, yeah.
God of War. No.
Yeah.
Love that guy. Yeah.
Love that guy.
But yeah, I it's hard to delve into it because we don't want to spoil anything, because it is doing a great job, and that's like the best I can say about it. I mean, Colin, do you have any favorite moments from episodes 1 and 2? I mean, we haven't really talked about the action scenes or anything, but
Yeah.
what stood out for you as like a unfamiliar territory?
Definitely, again, as a non-player, you're hearing the mythology start to get built out. So like they're having these conversations of like, is it true that like some of the infected like are like this or like that or that? And they're
That's a
going through,
reference to the game.
and like you're seeing the adults not even be sure. Even that, as like a casual viewer, I'm like, well, wouldn't you guys know? But again, I guess the society is so fascistic that it seems like everything's so controlled that when you do get that clicker reveal, I think it's pretty fucking effective, not only in the visual effects, but the fucking horror of the scene, of the whole buildup of like, not just quiet, silent. You are
Right.
going to be silent for this
and
part.
the danger
The fall.
just of one,
the
just of 2
escalation.
clickers. Yeah.
Yes.
Like in the game, obviously you're shooting. It's a game, so they want to add. You're shooting through a bunch of them. Like you're killing people left and right to add.
But
action to
it's
the
always
game.
a challenge, though, right, Jacob?
Yeah.
Even if you come up against 2 clickers, it's always still a challenge. which
Right,
is
and I
But in
think that's
this
what they
game, they'll
nailed in
throw
this.
like 6 at you.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you're
So the
throwing,
volume's
you're
slightly
throwing
higher
bombs and-
to gamify it. So to
okay.
make 2
doing
that
that.
threatening is really impressive, is what I'm saying.
Well, that's what I liked
It's
about
almost
it. Is
better.
that, is that they nailed the seriousness of just 2 clickers, like fucked them up. Like it took everything they could have just to take down those 2 clickers and
Yeah.
not
And they
get
still lost a
even-
third of their group.
And
yeah.
I was gonna say, and 2 people get hurt from it, and one of them has to die because of it. I
Right.
want to announce this real quick, guys. I think I have said something similar to this on this podcast before, but I want to make a formal declaration here. If we're in a group and I get bit by a zombie, I will not be telling any of you guys.
Oh, you're going to be that guy.
I will be
We're gonna exile you
hiding
from our
it.
group.
I will be hiding it. I will be torn up inside mentally, going like, "Oh shit! Oh shit! It's over!
Well,
It's
what's
over!"
your end game in that
I'm
case?
my Jacob. My
Yeah.
end game is if Ellie exists in this universe, especially like if I'm the other lady, I'm like, that little girl's immune. Let's play this out. Up until the point where the guy is
Right.
throwing up mushroom risotto in my mouth, that's game over. Obviously, I'm blowing my own brains out. But otherwise, I'm like, I might be able to get out of this. I
But
don't know.
you're endangering the group by saying I
No.
might survive,
Yes,
but if I
but
turn, I'm
no.
gonna fucking take all of you down with.
Yes,
Yeah.
but no.
Oh, good
Oh,
to know.
It's
Jeez.
not that. It's self-preservation.
Well, I will
That's
probably
true.
be exiling you from my group if we get in any
That's fair.
kind of post-apocalyptic situation because
Or the minute you see me
just can't
roll
trust
with a
you.
zombie, you'll be like, we can't even assume you didn't just get
Yeah.
scratched. And I'd be like, that's fair.
yeah,
Everyone in my group would have to, like, after a fight, like, okay, let's strip down. What's up? What do you got?
yeah, full body check.
Arms, legs, where you at?
Oh, Colin, you're
Like-
sweating a lot.
Oh, when I scratched myself shaving earlier, obviously.
It looks like a teeth mark. It's a new razor. It looks like teeth. Don't worry about
It's
it.
so deep. There's so much blood everywhere. And we'd walk
Yeah.
for another mile, and I would throw up a bunch of blood and turn to you guys and
Like,
say,
Colin's really
everything's
not looking
fine.
good.
Yeah,
I
you know,
think we're
those
gonna have to
canned
put 'em
beans
down.
that were expired really are not
Yeah.
agreeing with me.
As Jacob
Yeah.
shoots me in the back of the head.
Look
Yeah.
at the flowers, Colin.
I mean,
Look at
I've
the
told,
flowers.
I told friend of the podcast, ex Kaida, before, like, if we get in a situation like that, I'm like Shane in The Walking Dead. Like, I'm doing what I have to do to survive.
You are
You know, every man for
fully
himself at that
embracing
point.
bad guy behavior.
Yeah,
Not
Pretty
me.
much
I'm
immediately.
embracing weasel behavior. Oh, please, no, I'll do
Yeah.
anything.
A little,
Right.
little worm tongue, or that other guy from
Yeah.
The Hobbit.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'd like to believe I'd be more of a Andrew Lincoln, but
Rick. Yeah,
I don't have the leadership
So-
skills.
I see you
though.
as a-
I'd be
you're a
more of a
hero type
Carol. I
guy.
would start as a Carol and then learn to be a badass.
sure. I'd
So-
probably be like a Daryl, and then I'm a badass and I have a
I'd
crossbow.
be a camp mom and then become the camp queen. That's what I would do.
Guys, I want all that. That sounds great. I'm proud of us in the future. But so let's say when that guard is setting up the future to him, buying Vicodin, horrible. When he says pills and bullets, there's a factory. The only thing they make, I was like, this is the bleakest future
Yeah.
possible.
Hmm.
But when he points out and says, what do you want out there anyways? There's just monsters, gangs, and slavers and stuff.
Yeah.
Again, as a viewer, I'm like, oh shit, we are going to see some bad people along the way too. And that's
Oh, yeah.
very exciting.
And we'll think
Mhm.
about some of the groups that they met in The Walking Dead. You got cannibals. You got the mayor.
Nomad scavengers and stuff.
I
guys like the
would get
mayor.
bit and lie to you guys, but the second one of you was like, let's eat this kid, I'd be like, we got to kill you, actually.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
Right.
I'm never going to do cannibal stuff. It's never
No.
going to be appealing to me.
Stop trying to make it happen. It's not
Yeah,
gonna
it's.
happen.
I would.
I
For
would
real,
go
I'd be like,
immediately
if
to
I
that.
hear one of you bring it up again,
You'd be like, we
I
have
would
all this
never.
canned food still. I'd be like, no.
But then someone
we
would
gotta-
open a can of mushrooms
not
and you'd be
fresh.
like, you stop that? You put those mushrooms
Yeah.
down. That's my cousin. If
Glug,
you're
glug, glug, glug,
infected.
glug.
Yeah, don't-
like,
don't
no way,
eat
dude, you're
mushrooms.
sick. I only eat mushrooms.
Yeah.
Oh,
But I
there
do
we go.
like when Joel is doing a drug deal, the first scene after the thing, and then you get that mirror line in the beginning where he's like, where'd you get this money? Oh, selling hard drugs. Like, that's such a great mirror. And then the watch, the broken watch, right?
You watch it
Incredible,
broken.
like, just foreshadowing and stuff.
Click, click,
Yeah.
click, click.
He's like,
Love
yeah,
that
I know.
stuff.
It's frozen
That
in
whole
time.
scene of that woman rushing her out of the shop was really, that might be a Craig Mazin touch, right? That was like
Mm.
heart-wrenching of just a woman being like, I have the inside track from my country or whatever, that things are bad. I'm sorry, little girl, you should rush home. And for the husband to be like, I'm fixing the watch. What are you talking about? And just to be like in their own little world. It's like, when I just keep thinking about how like I don't have Twitter or social media or anything. And one day you guys are going to text me like, you don't know that the bomb went off. And I'm going to be
Right.
like, oh no.
Right. Yeah, you're not watching news on TV. All of a sudden it cuts out and like emergency broadcast comes on.
No, the old lady behind me is going to be doing this. And I'm going to be like, oh, one for Airplane or whatever the movie's called with
Right.
Gerard Butler.
That's why I don't bake. Stay away from flour. That's what I learned from episodes 1 and 2.
Right.
That's right.
Jakartan flour. Just double check it. But
Any other super shout outs on these before we go to our final thoughts on these first 2 episodes of The Last of Us?
yeah, and I think Jacob touched on it earlier in the episode when we were just kind of generally discussing some of the changes. The idea that the mycelium or whatever, that they are connected via mushroom network, because like that's a real thing.
Yes.
And that's something that I've been seeing more about recently. Like I'm sure it's been known about longer than idiots like me have learned. But the idea that they're communicating and sending nutrients where it needs to go, like there is a network with fungus in the forest floor. And I think that's really cool that they're like, well, if we're not doing spores, let's do that, which is in some ways
The idea that they're
scarier.
all connected, which is
And if one person turns and then gets connected, now
and you see the little
gigs up.
tendrils moving, which is super freaky. And even obviously Tess's big scene in the second episode when she's stalling for time and kind of,
her big kiss.
being a distraction. And
Didn't
the
need
thing
that,
just
but
basically
okay.
makes out with her. That's like
It's
incredible.
creepy
There's
though.
a
It's like
whole thing of
alien. It's
broccoli in her mouth.
unsettling. Yeah, this thing entering your mouth with that's a specific fear, I guess. But seeing them just swarming, I think that's really effective. That like if you're anywhere and you step on one, like now it's like, oh, you really gotta be very careful.
How many are coming? All of them, I figure. Less
I
than a
think that
minute.
was like a military thing in the game. The soldiers showed up. And then she buys time.
It was Fedra soldiers.
So they got to get Ellie out of there. It's a little different, but I think this works.
the
great.
idea
Gotta build
that-
up the threat. Yeah.
Yeah,
We'll
but
get to
instead of
Fedra,
them
don't
being
worry,
like individual zombies or whatever, the idea that they're like essentially one big organism. Like I love that idea for the show, and I think that could go in some really interesting directions.
While not compromising the main beats of the story. Like it's just an interesting direction to take the villain to make it more cinematic, and we can lose the gas masks.
Zombies haven't changed since they went fast.
Right.
It's like we need
Danny Boyle,
you know,
and that's it. We need something new.
They
Well,
we did
was
like
the big change in the game was like, oh, they're not zombies. They're infected by fungal spores. And that was like, oh, okay. They use like echolocation to like locate you and stuff like that.
But
That's
they're
interesting
blind.
ideas.
That's cool. Yeah, that's why you have to be silent. John Krasinski should get a cameo. I take it back.
Now, again, this is
Right.
one of those things. We're so old, you know, we watch everything with subtitles on. I believe confirmed all through the Normie hosts here.
I'm a
But
subtitle
when
boy.
it comes up, subtitles, him mouthing, they don't have eyes, make no make no noise or whatever he says.
Yeah.
There's
they can't
there's
see, but they can
yeah,
hear.
but there's no way you actually hear Pedro Pascal say that without subtitles on. How does anybody watching in the normal way just
You
get
just have
him
to
when he's like
infer.
You have
through
to
context
interpret it the
clues.
same way Ellie
Yeah.
does.
ridiculous?
I guess that's the
When he
last
says
thing
they
is-
can
Go ahead.
hear, technically, I don't think they're hearing. It's just the echolocation. That's why they use that clicking
Right.
sound, right?
That's what we
I don't know if they
call
made that
hearing.
clear in the show yet. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a bat, like she says. Their head splits open and they can hear like a bat, whatever. But
Yeah.
it's just that
Is it
scene
true?
alone is my highlight, because when she discovers the body, you're like, okay, what did this? Immediately quiet, silent, and the build.
Yes.
2 of them are
Yes.
dangerous. Now we get 100. Masterful. Pushing the statue over so it makes a noise so you can hide somewhere else. Slowly reloading the revolver, like
And that's kind
with
of
the
showing
dolly
that
pushes in. Like it's so
Yeah.
good.
Joel's been there before. Like he's fought these things a lot, so he knows the tricks of like, oh, make a noise over there to distract it.
Well, yeah, Tess
subtle.
looking back at him when Ellie's kind of rattling off what they're like, and she's like, they're fake. But we know Joel's not answering because like he's actually seen some shit.
Yeah.
So I'll just say real quick, you both texted kind of saying, first episode pretty good, second one sold.
Yeah. It's really the whole action scene in the museum and like the ruined Boston. Like that's what really sold me. Like they're nailing it with the clickers, and it's like I'm on board
In the
now.
Awesome.
world. Yeah.
And like
clickers
you
are
said,
love to
Mike,
hear that.
the reloading where he has to silently reload. Like you don't see it. Like you're Walking
Taking
Dead,
out all the bullets.
they never reload. They're just shooting
Oh,
20
Jesus
times
Christ.
per
Yeah.
clip. You know.
He's got 30 arrows at one point.
Yeah.
Right.
Like this is just more realistic where it's like, oh, you have a revolver and once you use those 6 shots, you need to reload as quietly as possible.
You don't want any of the brass casings to clink together. You don't want the cylinder to make a noise. You got to put them in your pocket and get 6. It's like, man, that scene was perfect tension
good
building.
stuff.
They crushed
Amazing.
it. Yeah, so good job, creators of The Last of Us. I guess it's that time, though. You know, you can't deny that view. You can't deny the views the show is getting and the reviews. So let's go ahead and talk our final thoughts on The Last of Us. Normies like us.
We're back, wrapping up here on Normies Like Us, talking The Last of Us, the HBO TV adaptation. Giving our final thoughts here. Talked a little bit of what we'll call The Last of Us Part 1. We'll probably come back to this show on another Whatcha or something in the future. So Normies, be on the lookout. We're not done with it.
We'll have to call it like The Last of Us episodes 1 and 2, because if we call it Part 1 and then Part 2, people might get the wrong idea that we're talking about the game Part 2.
That's
true.
true.
We'll try to make sure that our name.
And there's been
nomenclature
like
is clear.
3 versions of the first game now because they remade it and then they remade it again.
Oh, we'll
with better
re-record these
graphics.
in 10 years. We'll do remastered.
Mike, you said you played it on the PS3. Jacob, did you as well, or did you do the remaster or then the remake?
I think I played it on PS4.
Okay.
So it must have been I don't remember. 'Cause that
Maybe
came out
the
in, like, what,
remaster.
2012?
2013 was the original
2013.
release, I believe. So
Okay.
But was that still PS3 days or was that PS4?
I'll confirm.
I
played it when
can't
it
believe
was contemporary.
PS3 sounds so long ago.
Yeah. It might have been a dual release, like PS4 was newer at the time, so it
But
might have been
then,
like that.
so crown jewel of PlayStation, are we kind
Yeah.
of ready to say that? Is this their sort of like biggest character even maybe now? Or
This,
series?
Spider-Man, because those are all Sony
There's probably
exclusives,
3.
right?
And God of War.
God of War,
Or is that on
The
Xbox?
robot girl. What's the robot girl's name?
Robot Girl.
Who hunts the robots?
Horizon Zero Dawn, Aloy,
Horizon.
the game that I'm playing right now. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I can't wait
maybe I'll
for
talk
the
about that on
next
the
one.
next watch.
I
Right.
cannot wait. That sounds great.
But I think this is
Aloy.
definitely one of the highest, even when The Last of Us Part 2 came out, it's like one of the highest profile properties. I think it's a bigger deal than Uncharted is at this point. I mean, that movie flopped, but
Yeah.
that's unrelated. I think the
Trying
property
to change
itself.
things. Yeah.
Yeah.
Should have just got Neil Druckmann to direct that movie, I guess.
If you guys watch The Last of Us, if you watch the Uncharted movie, Sony has a new vanity card akin to a Marvel cinematic, setup where it's like, here's all of our stuff or whatever.
Venom, Morbius, all our favorite characters.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But on the
Craven.
video game side, you have to imagine that they are looking to monetize this stuff. I wouldn't be surprised if all those first-party, first-player, walking action simulators that we just listed off, Zero Dawn, God of War, Uncharted 6, we'll get 5 more of those fucking movies, are all primed to be made here, man. And if this is not just the first step, they got to be loving the goodwill this show's getting. We'll say that much, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's been a lot of praise for it so far. And I think part of that is just like, oh, they're actually just like adapting the story and like doing it well, because we've been let down by Halo and by all these
Ooh.
different shows.
Master Cheeks.
It's like a breath of fresh air that a video game adaptation could be good, which I just said earlier that there's been a few good ones in the last couple of years, but this one's maybe the most high profile in that it's sort of a HBO prestige drama show. That's going to be, I assume, doing Game of Thrones type numbers, Stranger Things numbers.
But Jacob, worth pointing out, that's a great way to put it, because this year we will also be getting the Peacock-produced Twisted Metal TV show. Now, certainly not going to be pulling the numbers The Last of Us it is. I think it is important to be like, no, this is population and critics facing. We are putting a push behind this to go, this is worthy to be talked about by everybody.
Yeah. I think there's a trend we're seeing too, where finally, we're getting to a place where people who actually grew up playing video games, people our age, slightly older, they're in positions of power in the industry where they can kind of make some more creative control decisions where that wasn't necessarily the case 15 even 10 years ago.
Well, it used to be,
Yes.
yeah, you're right. Like Hollywood producers saying, how can we make this into a movie? How can we make this profitable? Let's change everything about it and just basically use the name.
Mhm.
And obviously that didn't work for years. But
So
Hollywood
which one's
producers-
Zelda?
Yeah.
Arnold Schwarzenegger will play Zelda in this
Right.
Zelda movie, and you're like, no,
Zelda's back
and
in
you're
Europe.
just like, stop.
But now people are
Yeah.
sort of getting wise to like, oh,
Yes.
yeah, fans of the game want to see an adaptation of that story. They don't want a bunch of changes, which makes sense. And like that's like your prime audience, as well as also trying to get people who've never played the game.
It
and
can
just
be a
get in the story.
crossover hit by embracing it, but also acknowledging that it's weird enough and big enough to bring in other people. Yeah.
Right.
Totally. I think that's what I mean. Halo, I think they were trying so hard to be like, anyone can watch it. You don't need to know Halo. You don't need to know anything about video games. It's just going to be a great show.
So-
It should be a
but-
bonus if I do, not a detriment if I do.
Right.
Like
But
Yeah.
what does Microsoft do, Mike? Do they sit on Doom? Do they sit on Gears of War and go like,
ooh,
but
they
the
have
Halo
Bethesda.
failed, or do they get bold because of The Last of Us?
Seeing the numbers of the first 2 weeks, I think we're going to see more attempts at adaptation whenever we have left. It feels like Paramount with Halo did it the old way, where they're like, screw it, use the name. And then this is the opposite. The Witcher's a little bit a foot in each, on each side of the line.
Right.
Mario looks like it's firmly give the fans what they want. And I think that's what we need more of.
If Mario comes out, it's a huge hit. I hope that people they're going to
This
take the right
continues to
lessons
crush.
from this. Yeah.
It's a proven model, and they'll just copy the proven
I
model.
think that will to do a sloppy metaphor here, that will take the virgin fear out of Nintendo to have that we just got laid energy. And
Mhm.
finally, all that pent up stress from Super Mario Brothers, the movie, will like disappear from them.
The
Right.
first relationship they had with us, aka
Yeah.
Hollywood, really traumatized them.
Yes.
They did
And
not
Nintendo-
want to
well,
go back.
Yeah, and obviously Nintendo, they're very protective of their IP right now. Right?
Mm-hmm.
But we've had Detective Pikachu. That was,
Yes.
a lot of people like that. I think Nintendo is going to try to get more into movie adaptations. Zelda,
TV show
Metroid.
makes sense.
We gotta go to that
Metroid.
theme park, guys. I think, is that opening literally like tomorrow or
Universal
something?
has it right now, I think, right?
I would
It
give
just
fucking
opened.
anything. We gotta go.
Yeah.
We should do that before the Mario one. We should try.
Yes,
Make a
that
day
would be
of it.
amazing.
We'll go there and then leave and watch Mario. But we'll
Oh,
see if
man.
that happens.
They'll show
But,
it there.
But all
That's
that being
true.
said, Horizon, I wouldn't mind a Horizon adaptation if they're going to do it like The Last of Us. But the thing with that is, it would need a huge budget to even. I mean, it's a game where you're killing
So many
giant
of 'em
robotic
would.
animals.
Right,
That's not
right.
going to be cheap to make. So if
Halo
they did it
needs a
right-
big budget. I mean, you can't,
Yeah, some of the CG
No.
in Halo is.
But you
pretty
could
bad.
you could have done it way better than they did if they just gave it half a shit about
Oh,
the source material. Because
sure.
with The Last of Us, you can spend enough time with just characters chilling that you can have one big action scene every 2 episodes, so to speak. And there's
Yeah.
enough drama and character beats. But
Yeah.
with Halo, you can't really do that.
I
to
think
be
you
fair.
should at least have to have one interview with the creator where you go, why do you think your game worked? And, just like at least acknowledge the stuff that they say. Because anything
Yeah.
else, it's just like you're never going to figure it out on your own.
Yeah.
And we've been giving them credit for doing the bare minimum, right? Thank goodness. But they're also, in my mind, there's a little bit of them getting served a softball because the game, an underhand
yeah.
pitch, because
Yeah.
the game is so cinematic.
Here's the
it's easy to
blueprint.
not fuck it up. Yeah, so just don't
Totally.
fuck
Like
it
it
up.
was a slam dunk as soon as they announced it. Like, oh, of course that'll make a great adaptation because it's a cinematic game.
already
I've
a
just
Oh,
been
you
saying
movie.
got
that from the
big
beginning.
stars? Yeah, great.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've laid the groundwork for you. Just follow the trail.
I mean, Horizon, the story is not as good in Horizon, so I don't know if that would work or not.
It's very cinematic, though. God of War, very cinematic. Netflix just announced that they're going to be fucking around with Bioshock, I believe, with either a series of films or TV
Interesting.
shows.
That could
Is
be
there
interesting.
anything-
I mean, Bioshock 1 has a good story, but it's very.
It's got a good world. Again,
Yeah.
I think to mine some stuff that just has stuff that's worth being built out upon.
A Big Daddy
I don't
shows
know.
up twice in the series, and it's a big deal. The rest of it's very tense. I could see a
Yeah.
Bioshock
Yeah.
working, mate.
Yeah.
Is
Got
there
the
anything that
political
you...
stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, is there anything that you think would lend itself to good adaptation that is not in the works yet, now that we're seeing
I mean-
potentially more of these?
if you want to slam dunk like The Last of Us, like Red Dead Redemption.
Yeah.
If you want to make a
Oh,
western,
man.
like that would just be a
People
great
love that
western
western.
story.
You just you just
1886
literally
and
pay
stuff.
for the rights to go. Yeah, here's the
Yeah.
10 scenes you need to adapt.
I have a plan. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, just do that. Interestingly, too, we just saw in the video game adaptation world, Kojima just tweeting a photo of him underneath the A24 sign.
Right.
We don't know what
yeah.
that's about. What are you doing with
Well,
A24?
He's
Hideo?
scooping
know
up
that,
actors
Is there
for
some
his
news?
sequel. It seems like I don't
More
know.
Death Stranding
It's-
cameos?
one
Yeah,
guy,
it seems like.
Was attached to Metal Gear Solid. I forget his name now, but he
Oh,
was,
Jordan Vaught Roberts. Yes.
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay.
And he wrote this whole thing
Which
on social
again,
media. He's
if
like,
I was
this
Henry
huge fan of the
Cavill,
games.
I would be running out and signing up
Metal
to that to
Gear.
get my fucking franchise immediately and reiterate to people I'm a movie star. But no, it doesn't see. It seems like he wants
got
to play with his
Warhammer
little tabletop
40K.
toys.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Nerd's
Yeah,
gonna nerd.
again, here's the thing, because this is the point of the show. It's always funny to gatekeep like I just did to be like, no, the Warhammer 40K, that's too nerdy to make anything. The whole point of Normies Like Us is that the proof of the world is now it's like none of it is too nerdy for anything. Adapt everything, make
yeah.
stuff out of everything. Who cares?
Well, that's the
I'm
whole thing
happy
is
about
that
all of it.
We had a
nerd
successful Lego
culture.
Batman.
We won. We won.
Nerd culture has become the mainstream culture. That's what all
It's
Mhm.
you know, niche to normie. That's what it's all about.
Yes, it's
I
what
mean,
it's
20
all
years
in the
ago-
80s, Revenge of the Nerds. It's
Yeah,
here.
this was not the
Nerds!
case. This was not the case when we were growing up again in the early
No.
2000s.
No.
But now it's like, yeah, Game of Thrones was like the most popular show for like a decade, like a fantasy show. Yeah, that wouldn't have happened 20 years ago. So
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of possibilities with video game adaptations. I think we're going to see more and more of them, and I think more and more of them are going to be good.
We missed a 90s adaptation of Contra with Arnold and Stallone starring. That's the only one that would have been better if it was made back
They're
then.
on the box
Yeah.
art, Mike.
Yeah, they're
they'll just go
already
ahead
there.
and steal that. We can just
Yeah.
pretend. Now, my last question to you guys. Do we think any David Zaslav, CEO of WB/HBO fuckery messes up anything good we got going? I pray
think
to
with
God.
these big hits, like they're gonna leave them alone. Like that's the thing is HBO is known for quality shows. Like that's what their whole branding is about. Like we make really good shows.
And this is not an HBO Max show in the same way that Hot D is not. These are both HBO shows. And like you said,
Right.
Jacob, that means something. So,
Yeah, so I think there's a big difference in like the creative talent they get for these shows versus the execs who are fucking everything up with HBO and WB and all that. But like the shows are still good. You know, White Lotus, Succession, like these are quality shows, and I don't think they're gonna mess with that because that's HBO's whole brand is prestige TV, right? And I
Yeah,
think
and this
HBO,
is-
I think Last of Us falls into that kind of perfectly.
And it's been getting great
Turns out.
reception, obviously. So I just hope that they don't mess with it, one. And two, if this is a huge success, it kind of sets the template for here's how you do a video game adaptation. One, stick to the source material. Two, keep creators of the universe involved in it. And three, don't divert too far from the
Right.
source. Like be
If the story
true.
of the game worked, then just do that.
And if
you
you
know,
make
it's
people who
slam
played the
dunk.
game happy, they'll
Hmm,
keep watching it.
interesting.
And then other people, yeah, right? Come on.
Which
It's
once
all-
we get to
talk.
part 2, that'll be interesting because that was a very divisive game, which we won't get
Do
into.
you make the audience happy? Yes. What a
right.
change that would be.
Well, that was sort of the last Jedi of games, where it's like we're subverting your
Of
expectations, and
game.
a lot of people
Wow.
do not like their.
What if I made
expectations
the
to be
Last
subverted.
Jedi of video games? How would I do that?
Yeah, because it really is because there's a lot of really big fans of that game that say like, oh, it's a great game if you like what they're doing, and then there's a huge contingent of people that are like, we don't like it, like we don't like the big changes that you made, and
I
I
liked
don't
what
agree
I
with those
liked.
people, but
Don't
yeah.
ruin it.
We'll
Yeah.
see
Yeah.
that probably around season 3 for The Last of Us.
We'll
as
check in
viewers.
2 years on this podcast.
Mhm.
Yeah. And again, well, I just want to say one last thing for my final thought
Please.
to compare it to The Walking Dead again, but just to show that this
You have to.
is so much better. Like The Walking Dead, it started really good. Season 1 was great. It devolved into a kind of endless thing where they're introducing new characters. New characters get written off. The story just seemed to be going nowhere for seasons at a time. Last of Us, it's not going to have that problem because the story is already set. We know that there's like a finite amount of story, at least for part 1, that like they can't fuck it up. If they stick to what they've been doing, like I don't think they can fuck it up.
But can you
Unless they
imagine if
run
they
out
ended
of
up at a
books, so to
farmhouse?
speak. Yeah, if they run out of book like Game of Thrones did, like if they decide we're going
Yeah.
beyond and there's no more Last of Us games, then we might get into trouble. For I think
if
at
they
least the
stick
next
to
2 to 3
the-
seasons, we should be okay.
And that's what's great about the game is it's an isolated story. Like you don't need to continue Joel and Ellie's story after this. You don't need to. I mean, you can, but
You
Yeah.
spin it off and call it The Rest of Us, and it's everybody else.
the first of us. Yeah.
Yeah. But I think they're doing a great job, and yeah, all praise to these creators. Hopefully, they keep it up, and they get rewarded for the good work with both views, reviews, and recognition from their parent companies.
Yes. And like you said, reviews have been that way. I hope this show is not quote unquote the godfather of video game adaptations, just because I hope we keep pushing those
Sky's the limit.
boundaries. So let's keep going here.
Yeah. I only hope that
media properties.
Yeah, take the right lessons from this, and there's a lot of things you can do with video game adaptations.
But who knows? Maybe down the road we can go the other direction and actually do a good job too. Take a movie and make a good video game. We're still working on it.
Hey, yeah.
We're still working on it, but at least we're getting this part right.
All right, now we're wrapping up here. I will confess, about 20 minutes ago, a mushroom did start growing out of my arm. And I told you
no.
guys I wasn't going to say anything about it.
It's twitching.
Now really not making me feel good. So I do think we got to go here. As always, check us out at normies_like_us. Rate, review, subscribe. It really helps out the podcast when y'all do that. But of course, you can also check out our YouTube page and watch like the video version of this. That's great as well.
Absolutely. I was drinking one of the last Coca-Colas we could find in the Boston metro area after the end of the apocalypse.
It's a rare
gotta savor it.
commodity.
Is that
rare
chicken,
commodity.
Mike? Mike, is that chicken I see? Oh,
That's chicken of the sea.
Got
It's
chicken.
can of tuna.
some smugglers got you that.
Mm-hmm. And Vicodin. Well, this has been Mike Cilia, I guess. If we,
That's right. And this has been Colin
Professor of-
Liquor.
yeah.
Mycology. And this is what was I? Joel Lacob. That's
Joel
right.
Lacob.
You're all
You're
right.
jelly.
Put that rifle down, Jacob. Oh no.
Dang it, Joel. All right. Well, don't bake
Don't get
anything.
bitten. Don't get infected.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Stick
Stay
to your
safe.
Atkins diet, listeners. We love you. Stay safe.
Atkins.
Don't eat
Stay
flour.
safe. Bye.
Bye.